Hey everybody, Erickson Drone here. This is Jesse. You know, so many exploring videos start by finding something on Google Earth or Maps and then going to that spot to see what it is. And I love that. My favorite channels are Sidetrack Adventures, the POV channel, Desert Drifter, and it never gets old. We just do it in a different way more often than not in Northern California. We're in what was originally the northern part of Mexico, and land was granted and documented, which gives us fairly clear history of which hands land passed through going back to the mid 1800s. Before that, it was just Native Americans, so in context of modern societies, we have a very good historical record of who owned land, where they owned it, and when they owned it. Being in a very rich area that has wineries, I find that knowing the heritage of a location allows those wineries to better tell their story. And that's all wine is now up here, is hearing the story and buying the wine. For example, I'm back here today, mid-valley in Napa, at the Rector Creek Wildlife Preserve. The last time I was here, I found a wall, and then I found some more walls. Then I found what looks like it used to be an enclosure, and it got me thinking about the famous walls that run along the East Bay, also in Northern California. Now, stone walls are of a particular interest in Northern California because we have what are known as the East Bay Mystery Walls, a series of stone walls 3 to 4 feet high, without mortar, without any rhyme or reason to their layout, and without any idea of who built them. We're talking over 30 miles of walls, some on hills steeper than a 50% grade. So of course the speculations are crazy, from Chinese to Lemurians, refugees of Mu, sheep herders, 49ers, cattlemen, and natives. So I'm here to get visual documentation on the walls, get some drone footage, some close-ups of what might be growing on the walls, etc. Then I'll show you my process of how I do research, and we'll see if there's any relation to the East Bay walls. Nonetheless, I'll tell you my opinion, and if you stick around to at least the end of the hiking portion, you'll be amazed at what I found. Totally unexpected, and I bet it's the biggest one you've ever seen.
Hey, yo!
This trail goes up 1,000 feet in the first 3/4 of a mile. It normally takes me about 40-45 minutes to hike up at a steady pace. There are parts that are extremely steep, some parts have really loose rock, and if it even starts to drizzle, going back down is a death trap. So needless to say, it's not necessarily easy to get up here. That shows the initiative of whomever built these walls. Let's start to take note of clues like that as we walk to the wall. Alright, so here we have our first sight of the wall from the north. I didn't want to get too close to the house that's down there, so I took the trail to get above it. Now we'll head towards the wall, going across the hill, which is pretty steep. That's the spot we'll head to, right over there. Now, here's an interesting rock. It looks like there's an impression on it, which could be another clue. This still can fool you, though. The rocks here can be very geometric and break off into straight layers, like these rocks here. So we made it to the top part of the wall here. It's a lot longer than I thought. No mortar. Does seem like some parts are older than others. And when we got to the big kind of outcrop of rocks here, it seemed that they used that as sort of an endpoint and then didn't continue because it's either too steep or perhaps this is where something ended. That's what we're going to find out later. So I may have spoke too soon because this actually looks like a slight continuation of a wall that's cutting right through the bushes there. So let's go see. It looks like it. Looks like we have a continuation of the wall. Here's a big part that fell down. What we've seen so far is one long, continuous wall with a single trajectory. Some parts are missing, fallen, or broken down. There's no mortar, and there are at least 3 different kinds of rock. I think that just reflects the geology of the area. Napa is known for having half of the world's soil orders represented in just a 17-mile stretch from the volcanic and marine influence over the past 150 million years. We're at the top of the ridge. Let's take a look at the reservoir. Okay, so a little predicament. I need to get to that side of the mountain to show you the rest of the walls, but the sun is setting today at 4:30 and it's already 3:35. I'm gonna have to move quickly, not break my ankle, and get over there with enough time to get down the hill. This really will be cutting it very close. So this ended up being a bench that hikers built, but it shows some of that geometry in the rocks up here. Carrying this backpack with both my drones and multiple batteries is really heavy, so even though I'm racing against time, I really need a rest. Alright, so just through there are the walls that I found last time and came back for. The other wall I explored today for the first time. This area has some interesting things going on and more clues. We have a wall that has a lot of growth on it and uses a tree as a post. If I had digging permission, I would look for any evidence next to the tree for what could be an entry or doorway. That could at least tell us what the oldest generation was that may have used the walls. You'll also see as we make our way down this steep hill what I find to be the most intriguing. There was an enclosure. Being high up here could serve the purpose of a lookout point or animal gathering area. You also wouldn't want to be below any possible rock slide areas. We'll just add these thoughts to our clue list. Okay, if you've made it this far, this is what I wanted to show you. At first, I thought it might have been a beehive or a nest, but I didn't hear any buzzing or see any bees flying around. So I got closer, and I really couldn't believe it until I was right up to it. A huge lion's mane mushroom, growing in the wild, 1,000 feet above the valley floor. Okay, I gotta start heading down because Mount St. John across the valley is going to start to block the sun. It's already 40 degrees, so I really don't want to be out much longer anyways. Well, here's one more wall. We'll call it the bonus wall. Let's head home and see what we can figure out about these walls. Alright, I like to start with drawing lines on a map so that I can use it in overlays of other maps. So I'll go ahead and add yellow lines for walls that I know are there from my last trip, and I'll add red for anything that looks like it could be a wall for any return visits. We can't see the bonus wall we saw when we were coming down the hill on Google Earth, but we can clearly see it on iPhone's maps. And now I want to give you a little background on those East Bay mystery walls I mentioned before. Relics of the Gods have done an amazing job at marking the existing walls over multiple maps. At first, the lines seem to make sense, possible boundary lines and such, but then you find weird parallel lines, walls going straight up or straight across hills, very short lengths of wall, or lines that run for over a half a mile. And another odd thing, walls on grades over 50%. Extremely steep. Why? Well, ideas are all over the place, ranging from common sense to completely ludicrous. The first scholarly mentions of the walls was in 1904 by a professor out of UC Berkeley. He thought the walls were built by Mongolians or the Chinese, which is really a fringe theory favored by a group of people that believe a Chinese admiral came to California and created an establishment in the 1400s. The lack of artifacts or any tools leaves more questions. Were these corrals and guides for cattle or sheep? Was there a cattleman or shepherd presence in the area? Were they defensive walls? What were they keeping in? Or what could they have been keeping out? First, I want to explore the native theory. I want to see what tribes were in the area and if they have any cultural connection to stonework. So, Napa is home to the Wapos. When we go to the website for the Susquehanna Intertribal Council, we find that they were well known for precision basket weaving. Maybe we can learn something from the timeline at the bottom here. We see that initial contact was made by the Spanish and Mexicans in 1823, then a smallpox outbreak just 5 years later in 1828. From 1833 and on, Mexico continued to wage war against the natives and eventually drove them out of the area completely by 1856. Although it doesn't look like they're known for stonework or building walls, these are good dates to keep in mind. Maybe we can use them later for reference. Next, let's move through time and start by looking at the Mexican diseño, or drawing of the area from the mid-1800s. These drawings used naturally occurring boundaries to create maps and were part of the initial land grant process. These diseños are part of the reason that many lost their land due to not being able to confirm their titles with the US federal government. This is the Camas Rancho, named after the subtribe of the area, the Camas. It's amazing that roads today still align with the map, which helps us line this up with our Google map. The thing to take note of from this is that only the Napa Creek is labeled. We know today that there is a fork in the river in this area, and the Rector Creek connects down to it. Now I want to move through the Better Land Grant maps and see who exactly lived here. This map shows the sale of the Camas Rancho plots after George Yount's death. He willed that everything he owned be sold, which amounted to over $250,000 in 1870. However, this map does not show the side of the rancho that we want. We'll move on to the first map that we can find after the sale, which is 1876. We now have Rector Creek added to the picture, which better helps us situate ourselves, and we have our first boundary lines. This will be useful for an overlay later. We'll check the next map and see if any lines have changed. This is 1895, and the lines haven't changed. Let's see if we can find anything out about the families that lived on the property. The first land grant map has the names Burridge, Estey, and Schofield, the latter showing a Fry owning the lands. I know that the winery on the north side of the creek is Vinecliff, so I'm going to head to their website and see if they've done any research and if there's any mention of the surrounding walls. Sure enough, they have a timeline section that mentions one of the founders, George Burridge, purchasing 500 acres from the Yount estate. So he was the second owner of the land. And just as the map shows, the next owner was John Fry, who sounded like he expanded the property and added a huge mansion. But this is interesting. The first mention of stonework at all, a foundation and caves. You know what comes out of hand-dug caves? Lots of rock. After being shut down from Prohibition, the winery and cave didn't open again until 1995. Another place we can get some context from is the history feature on Google Earth. We can go back in time and see if the walls were modern or not. After toggling the dates and lines off and on, I can see that the impressions of the walls go as far back as 1993. The quality is too bad to see anything before that, though. Which brings us to our last place, acre value. This website can show you boundary lines in different plots. So as we get our bearings here, we can see that the northernmost wall does not align with any boundary. I still think that might have been a later add to prevent erosion, being that it's on one of the more steep parts of the hill and above the creek. However, we cannot confirm that this wall aligns with any historic boundary. As we move south and start to trace the modern lot lines, we see that there's a correlation right off the bat. This is promising, and it looks like this long, most southern wall might be the lot boundary for John Fry's original property. The area on top of the hill that may have been an enclosure is almost dead center in the property and does not align with any boundary. One last way to confirm our location is to do some map overlays. It's also nice to increase the clarity if you're in some editing software. Here I've added all the maps from the Mexican Diseño to acre value. Again, a great tool to blend maps and confirm your location. My initial conclusion is that some, but not all of these walls serve as property lines for the Fry Ranch. Further testing would need to be done to compare the other walls that don't correlate with the property line to the East Bay walls. However, learning about the stonework done at the Fry Ranch in regard to the mansion and caves, it's safe to say that there would be an ample amount of stone moving. Why those stones ended up where they did, though, remains a mystery. I would love to know anything more about what the purpose of the enclosure could be, 1,000 feet above the valley floor, surrounded by open sky and thickets of trees. Thanks so much for watching. I would genuinely love to hear what you think, or if you have any walls next to you that remind you of these ones. Subscribe and let's go find something else.